Is there anything you'd like to discuss before we begin, or do you just want to get right into it?
No, I got your note. I think I'm ready to go.
Sounds good. What's your name and why are you running for public office?
Well, my name is Mark Harmon, and I've always been politically active, probably since my mother slapped a John F. Kennedy sticker on my 3-year-old bottom. And I've always seen the value of politics, the importance of it in our lives, in everything from your neighborhood to your federal government and everything in between. And so when I see things going terribly wrong, well, I sometimes either back a candidate or I hope will do better, or in rare instances, run myself.
And what inspired you to run this particular election?
January 6th, my congressman from this area, Tim Burchett, uh, hours after insurrectionists invaded our capital and attacked police, gave the rioters the truth-denying and democracy-destroying vote they wanted. It was outrageous. And then, the more you look into his record, you find more outrageous votes. And I think, okay, this isn't really an election about left and right. This is an election about right and wrong. And the guy I'm running against is very, very wrong.
Okay. And how does a politician decide which party they're going to affiliate with? And are there advantages to these particular parties?
Well, I think you go with the party that fits your ideology best, and you're honest about it. I've always felt more comfortable, extremely comfortable in the Democratic Party. That's why I serve on the executive committee. That's why I've been, when I lived in Texas, I was a county party chair. Um, so, yes, there's a definite advantage to being a member of a major party. It simplifies the ballot access process. You have the opportunity to tap into pre-existing sets of volunteers, and and there are some people who automatically vote for one party or another, and you have those votes in your pocket. Running as an independent is a difficult task. I admire people who believe they should, but I feel very comfortable. I say I'm a Democrat without hesitation, hyphenation, or apology.
So you've aligned with a party, in your particular case, the Democrats, and it's time to start running a campaign. What are some of the key positions you need to fill in order to have a successful campaign?
Well, in any campaign, uh, probably the most important position is, of course, the candidate, him or herself. After that, the next most important position is probably the treasurer. The treasurer is the person who you trust to um, make sure all the forms are filed, all the rules are followed about fundraising, to keep a good track of where you are, so you know what you have, what you can spend, and on what. A very important position is treasurer. Another very important position is the campaign manager. That's the person who sits down, has strategy, and figures out, what is the magic number for winning? What coalition can we put together to win? What appeals work best with which groups? And so that's another very important position. After that, maybe a volunteer coordinator, someone who helps keep your volunteers animated, happy, and doing good work to reach voters. Those are probably the most important positions.
So, how does a candidate go about raising the finances required to run a campaign?
Well, it's a very difficult task. I mean, you look at the numbers. Winning congressional campaigns typically, spend more than $1 million. There's no way I'm going to raise and spend that kind of money. My opponent likely will, because he is incumbent. He's a Republican, and he can tap into all sorts of money sources. And that's a problem with our politics. I mean, it's not that your politicians are bought and paid for, but there are some who are rented, and they are rented by various powerful interests, who give them campaign money. And even if it's just the subtle bias of knowing that, of hanging around with all these people who have all the interests of the powerful at heart, that's going to eventually affect the way you view the world. I wish we had a better system, but I'm I'm doing it the old-fashioned way. I'm raising money, you know, and usually, very typically in small amounts. Um, people give small amounts of money, or even some modest amounts of money, and I appreciate it. I'm not getting money from huge establishment organizations. I'm getting it from individual donations from people who believe in me.
Do you find the individual donations to be more rewarding than, I don't know, a corporate donor or something along those lines?
Well, it's more rewarding because it's honest, because they're not expecting anything other than good governance. Uh, but the most rewarding part of the whole act of campaigning is interacting with people. When I won a seat on county commission, I won it by going door to door and just talking to people on their front porches. And that's the best way to win. All the research says that meeting a candidate in person is much more important than a TV ad, a radio ad, or a direct mail piece. And I'm hoping to be able to do a lot of direct campaigning. It may have to be by phone rather than in person because of COVID. But the great, if you hate campaigning, you're not doing it right, because there's great joy, or should be, in meeting people and interacting with them.
Well, let's do a hypothetical. Let's say there's a full-time hourly employee who gets that same inspiration you got to run for office. How plausible would it be that someone would be able to run a campaign while having a job? And what kind of positions are there available to people like that?
I'll have to sort of split my answer. My answer is yes, it's still possible. But if you got a full-time job, and if you're in a working class position, you don't have that much time to spare. But nevertheless, there are positions that are so important. Your school board, your city council, your county commission. These things, you don't think about it too much, until suddenly there's a zoning change and somebody is putting in a big box store 12 feet from your backyard. Or, some neighbor is trying to put in a swimming pool that's draining chlorinated water into your garden. Then you realize the importance of local government.
You've previously written articles for the Knoxville News-Sentinel, so as a journalist, do you think politicians are corrupt?
Oh, certainly. One of the great challenges is to keep your ethics about you, keep your head about yourself. Journalists do a great job of tracking some of the most extreme abuses. I think some of our contemporary journalism is not doing a good job of the simple routine task of helping voters make choices in local and state elections. But a lot of people have described the press these days as sort of how should I put it this way? Sort of I think the best analogy I heard was the barking dog analogy. If something is going terribly wrong, the press will bark. But it has to be going terribly wrong these days. The routine aspects of governance are not covered as well as they should be.
And do you think that theoretical bar for a story to become newsworthy has been raised? Or is it something a lot more simple than that?
No, I think it has become more difficult because we have fewer newsrooms with fewer journalists being asked to do more. And the stretching out of resources by corporate chains buying up media properties has only hastened the decline of traditional newsrooms. And that's a shame.
With that limited information, what can constituents do to maybe try and figure out if their politician has the potential of being corrupt?
Well, there are great tools out there. You can look up opensecrets.org and find out the campaign funding of your candidates and your representatives. And if you haven't looked there, you should. And there are other ones that keep track of these things. More importantly, you should just be aware of cynicism. Some people genuinely believe the stuff they're voting for, and others, I don't know. I wonder sometimes. But regardless, you have to, it does take a little bit of effort on the part of voters, but it's worth the time to look up their voting record, to go to neutral things like the League of Women Voters or Project Vote Smart, and learn about people running for office. It'll help you make better choices.
What would you consider to be a reasonable amount of time for a voter to dedicate to researching the candidates running in their area?
I bet you could do it all in less than an hour online. I mean, if you really wanted to make a smart, let's say you were torn between voting for me and the incumbent Tim Burchett. Okay, look at his website, look at my website. Look at Project Vote Smart, look at the League of Women Voters. Look up who's funding him, look up who's funding me. Compare our policy positions with what you believe. You can probably do that in less than an hour and make an informed choice. You might be able to do it in a half hour if you're really quick on the keyboard.
The 2nd District is one of the most consistently Republican districts in the entire Southeast. Do you think that your decision to run as a Democrat may end up losing you votes?
I am certain there'll be people who, because of the D behind my name is not an R, will not give me a chance. But I know there are other people who, for lack of a better word, lean Republican or vote Republican in the absence of a reason not to. And I intend to reach out to them. I intend to speak to them. I intend to say, hey, this isn't your traditional right-left election. This is a right-wrong election. And what Tim Burchett did in voting against the infrastructure bill or siding with the insurrectionists, all of these things that he has done, voting against COVID relief, they do not serve well the needs of this area, and I'd like a chance.
I saw that you've requested 2 televised debates with your opponent, Tim Burchett. What is the significance of the televised debate in local politics, and do you think you'll get these debates?
Debate is important. I did college debate. Wasn't bad. I earned a letter at Penn State in debate. Debate's important. It's a clash of ideas to see if people can really hold up to close inspection, to challenging of their ideas. I'm not afraid of it, but I think Tim Burchett is. In the last 2 election cycles, he did not debate his opponent, Rene Hoyos. He did not show up at events where they could, in effect, be compared head-to-head. And that's a shame, and it's cowardice on his part.
In the interest of transparency, I will disclose that I reached out to Tim Burchett for this interview as well, and at this point, they have not gotten back to me.
Okay. Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it was disheartening to say the least.
Okay. Well, good. Yeah. Well, I good to get to know you. I've enjoyed reading about you in your email.
I appreciate that. And the goal is just to show people that there are 2 perspectives, and it's best for you to know both perspectives so you can make an educated vote, because I believe every vote does matter.
It really does. So, yeah. So I see other questions here. What else do you want to know?
Well, this district has had extremely long terms for their representatives. If elected, are you prepared to make that 20-plus year commitment?
Well, let me explain that I believe in term limits. Okay, I think they're good for the body politic, but it's really between the voters and the candidate. Now, Tim Burchett does a very deceptive thing with term limits. He sponsors a constitutional amendment for them, limiting someone to 6 years in the House. Do you realize how hard it is to pass a constitutional amendment? That is nothing. That is no real policy. Actually, to get the 6-year limit that Tim Burchett is talking about, you have to vote for Mark Harmon, because I will take up his idea and say, you know what? All right, I will limit myself to 6 years if the voters are willing to renew every 2. I will not do more than 6 years in this office. I'm 65 years old now. Well, 64. I'll be 65 if I win, when I win. This isn't something I'm doing for a career. This is something I'm doing for the betterment of my community.
Considering the current polarity in politics in America, what are some of your beliefs that you think apply to both Republican and Democrats?
Well, one thing I want to do is don't throw up your arms and give up on everybody. There are good actors and there are bad actors, and the choice is always to get the better actors and the better policies in place. Right now, we're in a very dangerous moment. We have a Supreme Court that's about to overturn a women's right to choose. We have a Congress that, is barely Democratic, and the Republicans are blocking important progress. There are things where there is a distinct difference, and voters just can't throw up their hands and not participate.
What would you say to some of these voters who are losing hope? How would you inspire them to give politics at least one more chance?
I'm not sure that you give politics a chance. You do politics as an act of citizenship. But I understand people show up when they feel there's a threat. Look at the huge numbers who turned out to make sure that we got rid of Donald Trump. Well, Trumpism lives. It's still a threat. And it creates all sorts of threats to the very existence of a democratic elections in which the democratic results, small d democratic results, are respected. This is no time to sit on the sidelines, because the very act of democracy, the very ability to self-govern, is at stake.
On your website, you have a list of key issues you plan to address while in office. But do you have any actionable plans to achieve these goals?
Oh, well, I know how to write up a piece of legislation. When I was a county commissioner, I wrote up things, including a new vehicles policy. It's not a question of being able to write up these ideas as working legislation. I can do that, and I can certainly hire staffers when I'm a congressman to help me make sure it's in the proper form and goes through the proper committees. The real question is, okay, how do you get it done? How do you get the momentum? Well, just think about that in terms of this district. This district is supposedly not winnable for a Democrat. This district is supposedly like a 19 percentage points Republican. Mark doesn't have a chance. But if Mark pulls this off, if Mark Harmon wins, sorry to refer to myself in the third person, but follow this example, okay? If I win this thing, can you imagine the political earthquake and upheaval? What did he do? What was he running on? What were his issues? Winning this election will be the tailwind that will help me push the issues I care about.
Okay, so you use the momentum from flipping the district.
Well, I don't know if the district is flipped, but I think it's gonna take a pause here and look at me and say, you know what? Maybe we need to try something different, because our current congressman is just not doing it properly. He's acting more like a Twitter critic of Congress than a real congressman. And we need somebody who really wants to do the job. I'm that person.
Is there anything the people who may hear this can do to try and persuade Tim Burchett to at least participate in the debates?
They can, when he has a town hall or events, he generally avoids Knoxville because he lost the city in both of his last two elections. Within the city limits, he lost. So he avoids the city of Knoxville. But anybody who goes out to any one of his events or forums or town halls or whatever he goes to, ask him, demand. Said, look, why are you afraid of Mark Harmon? Why don't you debate him?
That's all my questions. Do you have any parting words for any listeners out there?
I think the reason I'm running is because public policy has been headed in a wrong direction for a long time. And look at things like student debt. I graduated with a very modest student debt, but that was a long time ago. And ever since then, politicians have been, reducing the per capita amount for students in colleges. I want to turn that around. I think that running and winning would be an act for me of giving back to those who open doors for me, and I want to open doors for them.
Thank you for your time, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Carson. It's been a pleasure getting to talk to you.
Have a good one.